What's up, guys? Good afternoon. We're on my way home from work, and we're gonna get home. We're gonna get the truck loaded up with some parts, and we're gonna go head out to Talbot Industries West and put the truck up on the lift and start working. So we're gonna be installing a Southbend dual disc clutch. So we'll see you back at the house when we get loaded up. So obviously, before you pull the tranny out, you want to take the shifter off and get the main part out so it's out of the way so you can drop it through the tunnel. So the way that these work is that the boot just kind of clips in place. So you put it all the way forward, get your fingers under the front like that, pop it free, and put it back. And you can take this and just kind of pull it up over itself, just like that, out of the way. And then you have this other rubber boot on the bottom. Roll down out of the way. Just like that. And then you just got 2 bolts there that you can zip out. And these are a 13 millimeter. You're all set. Alright, so we got the exhaust out of the way. Didn't show that because it's pretty self-explanatory, and there's plenty of other videos out there that explain to you how the exhaust comes out. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get the drive shaft out. So just got the flange on the back. Mine's got a carrier bearing. If you got like a regular cab, you're probably not going to have a carrier bearing, but mine's got a carrier bearing. And it's a slip yoke into the back of the transfer case. After we get that out, we can get the DEF tank out of the way and drop this cross member that the DEF tank sits on, and then we can start working our way up front, taking everything apart. Alright, so it's out, and I'll just kind of go over quick everything I did. First, there's an access panel on the bottom side of this mounting bracket, and you'll find your DEF supply line there. To remove that, you just pinch the 2 white tabs towards each other. The mounting bolts for that is a 15 millimeter, and then I guess hindsight, you don't really have to pull the tank off of this. You can leave it all as one. I wasn't too sure about that, but yeah, anyway, so the strap here is a 17, and you can see the tank here. So you have 2 main connections up top for this DEF controller computer. On the bottom side you have probably a level sensor there, and then you have your main pump, that your DEF line connects to. Additionally, you have a ground that connects to the main skid plate, and then this white connector that connects to the DEF line, and this is your heater. So on this connector, you're going to slide back that white piece, push down on the black tab, and that opens up the tab inside. This connector up at the DEF controller, or sorry, the main harness that comes from the truck, you're going to slide back the gray connector, push down. Same thing with this, slide back, push down, slide back, push down. You see a common trend here on these connectors. So the connectors aren't too bad to deal with. Skid plate is a little heavy and awkward. The main bolts on the side, there's 2 on each bracket, 2 on the driver's side, 1 on the passenger side, are also 15 millimeter. And as you can see, we got everything tied up over there. We'll tie up that line out of the way for now, and we'll continue on. Electrical, as you saw, this plug you got to push in on this side tab, and the whole gray piece slides back. It's all held in across there with all I call them Christmas trees. If you get a tool like this, I'll put a link to one in the description. It makes it really easy to get those Christmas trees out, the little plastic push pins, and most of the time you can get them out without damaging them beyond repair, so you can actually reuse them. Works out kind of good. So we got the main plug off of this shift solenoid for the transfer case. That got pulled up over onto the other side. There was a harness that ran kind of across this main cross member. There's a speed sensor up top on the tranny that got disconnected. The vent and the main harness runs across the top of the tranny, so we got both those off. Got this harness draped down here. Also took off the slave cylinder for the clutch, which was kind of intertwined with this harness, and that's why we took those off at that point. We are going to be replacing that anyways with a upgraded one from Southbend with the new hydraulics for the new clutch. So we got pretty much all the little details done. Now is the time to start, you know, doing all the hard part and the bolts and nuts and tranny jack and all that fun stuff. So we're gonna get everything tied up out of the way so we got some room to work and start working on getting this tranny out. Alright, just get the cross member out. There's 3 15 millimeter bolts, nuts rather, sorry, go across the bottom there, and then 2 main bolts on each side of the cross member. Those are 15/16 or 24 millimeter. And then, as you saw, the lock tabs for the lower control arms here grab onto there, which my opinion is that they probably should have faced the other way so that they don't interfere, but hey, I'm no Dodge engineer, so we'll just go with it. But so I just had to tweak it out a little bit and then pound it towards that side, the driver's side of the truck, to be able to swing the other side down and then wiggle it down out of place. So I started to drop the tranny and transfer case down out of the way from the tunnel, and your shifter housing is held in by 4 bolts. They are E12s, which are inverted Torx heads. A 10mm 12 point does fit kind of decent on them. Not sure if it's good enough to break them free. They weren't super tight. I did have the right bit, but get them broken free a little bit and then put a ratchet wrench on them to turn them out the rest of the way. So we'll get that taken out before we get the tranny jack under here, and that'll give us the room to pull everything out. I'm sure if you pulled your center console apart and opened up this area here, you probably wouldn't have to pull that off, but I feel like pulling all that apart and 4 bolts is a lot easier than taking the interior apart, in my opinion. So we'll finish getting that apart. Tranny jack is under the tranny. We got another jack right there under the oil pan to support the engine. We got a pretty downward slope. I've got 2 feet of that on the support there, the main mount in the back to kind of hold it. Hopefully this is going to hold the transmission and the transfer case all nice and square. So now's the fun part of wrestling with it, trying to get it out. So let's see what we get. Tranny's out. Didn't come out too bad, had a little issues with it as always, but we had the shifter assembly fall back down and get kind of wedged, so came up with this design here to hold that up out of place. So I guess now's the fun part of getting this clutch out. I heard they are very, very heavy, so I guess we'll see how it goes. So just got the pressure plate off, just 8 10mm bolts that go around the outside here, and to undo the factory dual mass flywheel, it's actually bolted from the front side just like a torque converter on an automatic. So I'll try to get the camera up there and show you. So we'll have to support this end and get up in there and take the bolts out from the other side. So there's where that axis cover is, and then in there you can see that bolt sticking through there, and you're going to take those off, and that front part of the dual mass flywheel will come off. Dual mass flywheels are weird because it always looks like they're broken, but they're not. Flywheel's off, and the adapter plate, there's a thin piece that bolts to the crank. I'll show you that, and then I got the cover back on, which you can see right there. So that's what it's going to look like before I take the cover off, and that's where you access the bolts to the back side of the dual mass flywheel. And that's that intermediate piece and that washer there that distributes load. The clutch we're going with is a Southbend SDD3250-GK. And we got it up here on the bench. We'll start tearing it apart, getting down the flywheel. It comes all bolted together already, but gotta take it apart to bolt it up, obviously. So we're gonna start with doing that. So, got the pressure plate, flywheel, all that bolted up. Flywheel bolts up, then your pressure plate, all the clutch discs are labeled pressure plate side or flywheel side. Make sure you follow that, otherwise you're going to have issues. And torque everything in a star pattern, and then go around and double check everything. Use your clutch alignment tool, match up the factory spray paint marks on the side there so everything goes back together the right way. And we'll go over and swap on the new draw bearing and arm. So we'll pop out the old clutch fork and pilot bearing. There's just a spring clip on this side, so you just pop it off, and the whole assembly slides off just like that. You do reuse this spring clip on the new one as well, so make sure that that doesn't get damaged or lost. Yeah, stick your finger there. So we got the clutch in, everything's all bolted up, everything looks good. We got the tranny all set there. I do have a girdle that I'm going to be putting on. It's not going to be going on at this time. It's going to go on at a future instance, but you know, it's something you can look forward to coming up. But for now, we're going to get that tranny up and in there and start bolting back together. Alright, so it's the next morning. Last night it started getting pretty late and we were just trying to get things wrapped up, and I cut the time lapse short. We were having issues getting the tranny up into place and get the input shaft lined up with the clutch and all that. So we ended up getting it. The issue that we ran into was getting the splines ran up, where if I was thinking ahead, which I wasn't, but maybe you can use this trick when you do it, is leave your transmission in gear and put it in four-wheel drive before you take it out. And that way, you'll be able to turn the input shaft. You really can't get to the back here to spin it with your fingers, but if it's in four-wheel drive, you'll be able to turn the yoke on the transfer case to spin the input shaft and get it up in there. The only issue you may run into is getting the bolts out for your drive shaft, since you won't be able to spin stuff, but you can always take your drive shafts out first, you know, and then put it into gear and four-wheel drive, and you should be all set. So as you see, transmission's bolted up in place. We got a couple more bolts and brackets to put up, but right now we're gonna get the cross member up in place, so that way we can get the jack stand out of the way and have some more room to work. Got the cross member bolted up in place. As you saw, I used plenty of anti-seize on everything. Now this truck does not get driven in the winter, but stuff will still rust together, and it doesn't take that long just to throw some anti-seize on it and know that it will come apart the next time that you need it to, because working on stuff isn't necessarily the best thing to have to do, and then when stuff starts to not come apart, it just makes it that much less enjoyable. So we got that on. The other thing that I forgot to mention was, can't see it now because it's tucked up, but the shift tower, we had some issues getting in last night, and we found that because I didn't take the center console all the way apart, I just pulled the top boot off and I left the lower boot, that it causes the shift tower to want to twist, so it won't go in straight, and it'll either knock it out of the neutral detent or it'll shift the tranny in not the right spot. So there's also 2 dowels that help align it, and I found that the dowels go through the shift tower. So if you tap them through the shift tower, so there's only about a 1/16 of an inch on them, you'll be able to get the shift tower down into the shift forks of the tranny, and then you'll still be able to line it up with the dowels, but you'll know that you're in gear or in neutral. And then it also helps to have somebody up top in the cab of the truck just to kind of help take some of the pressure off that lower shift boot where it hits the shifter stub. That's what we ran into. But now that we got this on, we'll put all the electrical back up in place, start routing everything, and eventually, you know, put this thing on the ground. But we still got some time before that. So just gonna wrap up down here, get the DEF tank bracket, the tank, the drive shafts. I'm gonna paint up the drive shafts quick before I throw them in, and we're gonna get everything buttoned up down here. I'm not gonna really show you any of that because it's all pretty self-explanatory, and you saw how it came apart. Just goes back pretty much the opposite way. If something comes up, I'll make sure to show you, and we'll probably meet back when we change over the heavy-duty hydraulics for the new clutch. Well, got the drive shafts all painted up. Did a base coat of epoxy primer, and then just a top coat of a satin black rattle can. So at least these won't get all rusty anymore. I don't know why they don't just paint them from the factory, but we'll slap them in. That'll be it. On the front drive shaft, there's a grease fitting that's supposed to be greased every oil change, and that's it, right down in there. So you need a needle greaser, and I put a paint marker on it where it is so you can find it underneath the truck, because this is a pain in the ass. The last thing that needs to be done is put the heavy duty hydraulics in. So when we assembled, I left the slave cylinder out on purpose because I knew it was coming back out, and we're just going to trace back the line, pop all the clips off, and pull it up through from up top, and we'll get the other one in place in opposite order. So here's the heavy duty upgrade kit. Comes with your master cylinder, reservoir, slave cylinder, all attached as one. Factory clutch safety switch there. So you got to disconnect it from the clutch pedal, disconnect it from the firewall, and then route and reroute everything. So we've got the clutch safety switch there, and then where the rod goes through is that white pin, and then the 2 nuts, which one is there and one is there, and that all comes out. So we'll get that all popped out of place and pulled through the firewall. So the white pin that holds your clutch pedal to your master cylinder rod has kind of like a 4 barbed end on it, and what I found is that a 3/8 socket, and you push on it like that, and then stick a screwdriver in this side and pop it free, and it comes right out. So there's your trick to save you a bunch of time. Damn, rough neighborhood around here. So here's the factory one out on the floor. You can see it's got like a hard plastic line that feeds and is molded to one shape, versus this one has a stainless braided line, and this one also has the remote reservoir opposed from that one being on top. So we'll go over here, and you can see through there where it came from. If your truck has the factory aux switches, you're going to have this box here, the relay box, and that just unclips on the side of these 2 tabs, and you'll have just enough room to squeeze everything up through this opening here. So we're going to get the other one dropped down in place and hooked up. So we got the new one routed up in place right there. We'll bolt it up, put the pin through, connect the safety switch, and then go down bottom. So back underneath the truck, that's where the slave cylinder goes in, and this one comes pretty much zip tied in place, so that way you don't have to fight it getting it bolted up. And then the first time you depress the clutch, the ties, these straps there break, and then after that it's all normal operation. So we're gonna get that bolted up in place, and then we are good to go. Everything's buttoned up top, and pretty much ready to fire it up and check the clutch. So the last thing to do is mount the master cylinder for the clutch hydraulics. And as you can see, there's no place to mount it, so that's why I have it zip tied up to that tab on the firewall for now. The factory clutch hydraulics has the master cylinder as part of the master cylinder assembly, where this one it's a remote style. So you're gonna have to wait a little bit, but I have something in the works for a custom mount that will provide a very good solution for this. Because, you know, obviously there's no way that I'm going to take two self-tappers and self-tap this thing into the firewall of an $80,000 truck. So, with that being said, like, comment, and subscribe. Hope you liked the video. Stay tuned for more, and stay tuned for my solution to mounting the master cylinder to trucks, and even trucks with the auxiliary switches, which is what this box is here. So, thanks for watching. Have a good one.